I've been taking the last couple of days to reflect on Pearl's time here. If you missed the last video, I did get some bad news that she probably is here for palliative care. There really isn't a timeline for her at this point. I am still hopeful that she is going to improve a little bit and can have some time to enjoy her retirement and hang out with the other horses. I am just going to keep chugging along with my normal program for a horse like her, and hopefully she'll get a little bit stronger. I would love her to gain a bit more weight before real winter comes. So that is really what we're going to be working on for the next couple of weeks. This morning after I did chores, I did deworm Pearl. This can be a really tricky process with a starved horse, so I usually wait until they are healthy and I've spoke with my vet about the best course of action. Despite my best efforts to keep all of the horses clean, Ziggy is really trying my patience. Thankfully, the footing is pretty much dried up, so I can actually get this dirt off of him every day when I bring him in for the night. In addition to teaching Scarlet some pretty good manners, he is also teaching her how to be a little piglet as well. Zig. We've got a few hours before it's actually dinner time for these horses, but I'm going to refresh Pearl's pile of hay. Since she is strong enough to get up on her own now, I am going to put down some nice fresh straw for her to lay down in if she wants to. I have been getting a lot of questions about why I don't just put this girl in a stall, and she is actually quite a big mare. I haven't measured her, I keep forgetting to do it, but I think she's at least 16 hands and she's probably about 1,200 pounds at this point. Horses can get themselves cast in a stall, and that just means they lay down, they kind of roll around, and then they get stuck with their feet either up in the air or against the wall. Even a healthy horse would have trouble getting out of that situation, so it's just something that I'm not going to expose Pearl to. The weather is still unseasonably warm. It makes the horses extra frisky this time of day. All of them do have full winter coats. Pearl's is pretty long. These horses have been doing a lot of running around, and thankfully the ground is mostly unfrozen for their shenanigans. I don't know why, but Ziggy has been extra sassy towards Scarlet lately. He still chases her around a little bit when they get turned out, and then when he knows they're going to be brought in. All of this is very good for Scarlet. She needed a little bit of extra manners around other horses. Girl. Because I did just deworm Pearl, I am going to check to see if there are any surprises in her manure. Given the state she was in when I bought her, I would not be surprised if there are some little surprises in her poop today. There are a lot of things to consider when you deworm a horse, and there is a lot of bad information out there on the internet. I am going to go ahead and link another channel in the comments. Mare! Dr. Martin Nielsen from the Gluck Institute has his own channel, and he has so many good videos about deworming and worms. For anyone wanting to learn a little bit more about these creepy crawlies, I would definitely head on over to his channel and see what you can find. I'm going to just keep checking her manure until I see evidence that her dewormer has worked. The ones I'm looking for we should be able to see with the naked eye, so eventually they'll come out. I've also had a lot of questions on why I'm not turning Pearl out with any of the other horses. Part of the reason is we are still getting her parasite load under control. I think it is wild that people buy a new horse and turn them right out onto their pasture. That is the easiest way to really infect all of your horses. Our crazy weather has my dry lots looking a little bit gnarly right now, but it is so much safer to keep all of the poop in one place so it can be properly cleaned. I am going to scrub out this water tank tonight and refill it for the boys. The last couple of days I've noticed that Pete, Little Gus, Whiplash, and Stewie have been watching something in the pasture. I haven't been able to figure out what exactly it is. It might be the badger out there, but usually I can see him if he's out there digging. There are a bunch of new holes that have popped up, so I am probably going to close these boys off from their pasture the next day or two. It really seems like Big Gus and Ziggy are in a competition to see who get the most disgusting every day. Gus has freshly rolled in the sand in the arena, and it's not even completely dried yet, so I'll have to get this off of him later.
Gussie. Gross, Gus. Let me see you, Goosey.
I'm going to be so excited when the snow comes and these boys can roll around in something other than poop all day. If it gets a little bit warmer here, I'll be able to scrape all of this old manure before springtime, which is something that I usually never get the chance to do. Since we do get so much snow, usually it just snows on top of the poop and then it kind of piles up over the winter, and then once a year I clean these dry lots out and it works perfectly. It has been driving me a little bit crazy seeing the dry lots like this because this is not standard procedure. I hate to hope for harsher weather, but if it was a little bit below freezing and there was some snow on the ground, my job would be a lot easier right now. I do clean out the large arena every day after I put these boys back in their pen, but here lately they've been staying out 24 hours a day.
There, Goosey. Boy.
It just gives them a lot more room to roam around, and with the arena so hard, I haven't been able to work any of the horses. With the holidays finally over and some answers back about Pearl, I finally have the mental space to start working with Stewie and Prim again. I'm really curious to see what exactly they are seeing out in this pasture. Pete seems really distracted lately. I caught Pearl investigating her little straw bed. I had a feeling she was going to try and eat it. I would rather she just ate her alfalfa. She does not need this low-calorie straw. This is basically just filler if she were to eat it. If you ignore the fact that her abdomen is still pretty distended, her muscling doesn't look too bad right now. She certainly looks a whole lot better than when I picked her up at the auction. This weather has been a little bit inconvenient. It is now too cold to give Ziggy another bath. Hopefully his mud will dry before the sun goes down so I can clean him a little bit.
You're killing me, buddy. Why?
I've gotten to a better groove of cleaning the run-in sheds every day and moving all of the horses around. The little turdmobile has been pretty handy lately, so I've really enjoyed using it. I don't know if it's actually cut down on the time it takes me to do all of the chores. With the warmer weather, I'm basically having to do wintertime and summertime chores every day. Before it does get too dark out this evening, I am going to groom Pearl one more time to help get the fluid moving and hopefully her edema to go down. I have been using a pumice stone on her. It helps keep her clean when she lays down and poop. I thought this might have been a little worm, but it was a piece of hair.
Tiny. What are you doing? What? Zig! Zig.
With the sun going down, it's now time for Ziggy and Scarlet to come in. Ziggy has a few more days to let his tooth heal, but then he can get right back to work. Hopefully some work will reduce his urge to get completely covered in mud every single day.
Come here.
With Ziggy now disciplining Scarlet pretty heavily, I have noticed that she is blue some of the times. She is still pretty much on the same routine she's been on, but she's full of a lot less sass. Even though she has really matured mentally, she still has times where she does get a little bit squirrely.
You're okay. You're all right. Hey. You're okay.
Since these horses are still not dry, it is going to take me some extra time tonight to get them all groomed up. Hopefully tomorrow they won't get so dirty. The next morning, I started to see some evidence of some freeloaders that Pearl was evacuating. These little red grub-looking things are botfly larvae. It is very common to see botfly eggs on your horse's hair in the fall time. They're just little white eggs. A lot of people scrape them off. Right next to this one, there's also a tiny little white worm, and that is a small strongyle. Pearl seems to be in good spirits, so I'm just going to keep an eye on her for the next couple days.
Stewie. 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 Hey. Come on. Go. Go. Come on. Come on. Stewie.
I had been getting Stewie ready to ride, but with Pearl's recent diagnosis, I have been a little bit off track.
Oh, boys.
I spent the day doing chores and catching up on everything, and by the evening these horses were spooked again by something out in the pasture. It wasn't until the next day that I finally figured out what in the world these boys were getting spooked at. As luck would have it, when I was filling up Pearl's water, I spied the culprit. I'm not sure if this is the same little guy I saw earlier, but I think it probably is. It looks like he's investigating all of the holes that the badger has recently dug up. I was really worried that Tiny was going to venture over here and try and snatch this guy, but now I'm thinking that she may not be fast enough with all of her winter weight. I did take the time to sit down and watch this guy for a little bit of time just to see what he was up to. It didn't take very long for this guy to zip off and me completely lose track of him. With all of the horses already fed this morning, I am going to spend some quality time with Pearl. I was really surprised to see this little guy again. It is kind of a bummer because there are a lot of birds of prey swooping around right now. Since we do not have very much snow, it is kind of easy to spot him when he's running across the plain ground. Thankfully, we still have a few patches of snow that he can camouflage himself in. Overall, I really haven't found very many parasites come out of Pearl. So either these little guys are drug resistant or they might still come out. Our goal with deworming this time was to get rid of those tiny little white worms that I saw earlier. We did treat her with a dewormer that should get rid of the encysted ones that may be lingering around. Hopefully this will help the edema go down in her abdomen. The vet was fairly certain that the edema in her abdomen is from her disease process. But there is no reason why I can't treat her like any other normal horse and she can get regular care, and hopefully that will improve her situation.
Hey, Mama.
She's looking a little bit scraggly this morning. I can tell she has been laying down or at least rolling in her new straw bed. Anytime I see her taking naps, she does do it leaned up against the fence, so I'm not confident that she'll actually sleep in her straw bed. It's more likely that she's gonna poop in it and use it for rolling around, scratching her itches, but that is totally okay. Every day when I handle Pearl, I make note of her mental state. Most of the day she is really happy to see me. She really seems to like our grooming sessions twice a day. She seems to be a whole lot more relaxed now that she's been refed and has access to food all the time. She really doesn't do much other than eating these days, and hopefully her appetite will stay good for quite a while. As long as she keeps improving, I'm happy to keep providing her with the care that she needs. I still have not heard back from the vet yet as to how her pregnancy test came back and her metabolic tests. Those are two things that I'm going to have to work into the mix when I receive them. The pregnancy test is just to triple check everything we've already done, but it is very likely that her tests for insulin resistance and PPID are going to come back with some kind of elevated values. This morning's poop investigation was not very fruitful. All horses have some kind of worm burden, even if they are tested meticulously and dewormed on a regular schedule. I kind of wish Pearl would have had a large amount of worms come out, because it would have made me feel a little bit better about her recovery. Unfortunately, so far she has produced a very normal amount of parasites in her manure.
Girl. Hey, girl.
That doesn't mean we aren't going to see some improvement. It just means that it probably won't be as drastic as I was anticipating. For really complicated senior cases like hers and of course Nigel, there really isn't any plan. These kind of horses, you just have to play it by ear. Anytime something in their situation changes, I get a hold of my vet and we rework the plan. If you haven't seen Nigel's story yet, he was one that was just like Pearl when I bought him. I really thought I was going to have to euthanize him when I brought him home, but he has been here for a couple of years now. He does have his own challenges that he works with every day, one of which is that he is extra sassy now. With the warmer weather, he has had a little bit of extra spice in him too. Today I am going to strip his little tent and put some new shavings in.
Whoa, careful, Nigel!
Lately, Nigel and Frisco have been having a little bit of a harder time. I think it's just too warm for them with the winter coats on.
You're all right, Nigel.
When I first brought this little guy home from the sale, he was actually thinner than Pearl was. He had been foundered, he had a broken jaw, and he did not really seem too interested in doing much of anything. I think part of his miraculous recovery has to do with how sassy he is on a normal day. He loves being outside and really does not like me smothering him too much. With some cooler weather on the horizon, I did put up a little bit of a windbreak for him. I think I'm also going to have to find a way to secure the back portion of this shed. I do have the sides stapled down so no wind or air can come through, so I need to do something about this back piece. It's nice to have the ventilation, but when the wind blows, it basically just blows all of the straw out of here. This little shed has been tested a few times this year, but I'm not sure it's going to survive the whole winter. But today I'm going to do my best to prepare it a little bit better.
Hey, Mare.
Hey, Zig.
Tiny. All right, Nigel. Nigel. Frisco Bill, wanna come out, little boy? Come out, little boy.
Another golden oldie that lives here is Frisco.
Whoa. You okay?
This unseasonably warm weather always gets Frisco's guts a little bit full of gas.
You okay?
Typically, I just keep a really close eye on what he's eating. I don't change his feed in any way. It really helps if he can get out and move around more, so he gets a little bit of a free range of the place most of the time. I've had him since he was a yearling, and he's going to be 30 years old in 2025, which makes him a few years older than Pearl.
Doing, old boy?
I could tell today that he wasn't feeling quite right, and he did have a lot of gas built up in him. With it being really hot like this during the day and then dipping down to cooler temperatures at night, it can be a really serious risk for gas colic. Scarlett did have a scare with some gas colic a few days ago, so this temperature is really starting to present some problems for me. Really, all I can do for it is keep a very close eye on them and treat them with anti-inflammatories when it's warranted. Thankfully, Nigel seems to survive in any kind of weather pretty easily. He is perfectly content in his little pony palace with his scratcher and his shed, keeping a very close eye on Frisco. I think secretly he wishes that Prim could be his girlfriend. He still keeps all of his little stallion piles of poop nice and tidy. Because Nigel is a stallion and he does have trouble seeing now, it would be inappropriate for me to introduce a new horse to him. While Nigel's exact age is still unknown, he is older than Frisco.
Nigel? What you doing, Tiny? Whoa.
It's really only a matter of time before Prim gets upset that Frisco is turned out, and she is not, so I'm gonna scoop her up. All of the horses have been on their regular turnout schedule, so they've gotten the time to get out and stretch their legs and run around if they want to. There is a little bit of ice on the ground still, but I've been sprinkling it with some pet safety icer so they don't slip and get hurt. Prim has been trying really hard to make friends with Scarlet, but Scarlet really doesn't care too much about her. Frisco has been wanting to spend more time with Scarlet as Prim annoys him. For some reason, unless Frisco is turned out, Prim will not run around and play. It'll be good for Frisco to run around a little bit too, since his sheath is a little bit swollen.
Hey, Mare. Ooh, fresh poops.
I was doing some hand walks with Pearl, but she was having a really hard time catching her breath. She was turned out a bunch of times, and other than one time where she moved around quite a lot, she just basically stands there now.
Hey, girl.
I think the most beneficial thing for her at this point in time is just to let her keep eating as much hay as she wants. It really does her no good to turn her out if she is not going to move around. I have been taking note of her pulse and respiration during the day, and when I see that she's winded, this will probably be the biggest indicator as to when she might be struggling.
Tiny!
Speaking of exercise, Tiny has been getting a little bit on the round side these days.
Tiny! Careful, girl. Careful.
I've noticed that she's had a little bit of a tricky time doing all of her normal activities. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time making sure she gets some exercise as well. After a very exciting game of turd toss, Tiny and I get back to work cleaning out all of the dry lots and the stalls. Of course, after all of her hard work, it's only fitting that she gets a little bit of a snuggle time.
Come on, Frisco Belle. Come on, Prim.
Once Frisco and Prim's stalls are complete, I can put them back in their pens and get out Ziggy and Scarlet for the day. Thankfully, since the last time Ziggy got covered in mud, there doesn't seem to be too many puddles left out here. With him constantly slopping around in the mud, I noticed he has a little bit of a yellow tinge to his coat now. I was really thinking that Ziggy and Scarlet could go out with Frisco and Prim, but now I'm thinking that possibly they could go out with some of the other horses. Scarlet really doesn't act like a mare. Compared to Prim, she acts more like a gelding right now. I will be really interested to see if that changes when spring rolls around.
Zig?
Working with at-risk horses is definitely not glamorous. It's mostly a lot of chores and worrying about the future, making plans and then changing those plans as different things come up. But right now I feel like I'm headed in the right direction with all of the horses. Here is a pretty good example about some of the things I'm worried about Pearl with. She was pretty interested in getting her dinner grain and wanders over to see what is in the bucket. After just walking across the round pen, she is visibly winded, even though it really wasn't that far. Of course, older horses like her can get winded from lack of exercise, but it is something that I will keep a very close eye on. Compared to the auction day, she is looking so much healthier overall. Her muscle mass has improved greatly. I cannot feel her ribs anymore, and her spine is looking pretty normal at this point for a horse her age. Some really impressive gains for less than 2 months from the auction date. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.